The weeks after Christmas pass quietly, but a subtle shift has occurred in the cabin. The emotional distance between Mary and Dakota, once vast and unbridgeable, has begun to close. Dakota, though still reserved and guarded, is starting to show Mary small signs of trust and respect. He no longer views her as an outsider, and although he's not yet capable of fully expressing his feelings, he has started to acknowledge her presence in a way he hadn't before. Mary, for her part, has stopped seeing Dakota as the cold, distant man she first met, and has begun to recognize the depth of his inner turmoil, the pain he carries from his past, which he has buried deep inside. Their relationship, still in its early stages, is delicate, but both are working to forge a connection. Dakota, in his quiet, steadfast way, teaches Mary more about the land, the animals, and the skills she needs to survive in the harsh desert environment. His lessons are practical: how to track animals in the snow, how to navigate the rugged terrain, and how to gather the herbs that grow in the desert. He speaks less now, but when he does, his words are less blunt, tinged with a rare hint of affection. There is an unspoken understanding that has formed between them, a mutual respect for each other's resilience, strength, and shared struggle. Mary, in turn, begins to open up more to Dakota. She tells him about her life back east, her family, her struggles, and the life she left behind to come here. Dakota listens quietly, his eyes never leaving hers, as if trying to absorb every word, every detail. There is a softness in his gaze now that wasn't there before, a glimpse of the man beneath the hardened exterior. Mary doesn't push him to share his own past, but she senses that he is starting to feel something he hasn't in years, a connection, a tether to another person, and perhaps the beginnings of a healing process he had long denied himself. One afternoon, after a long day of work, Mary and Dakota find themselves sitting outside the cabin, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The colors of the sky shift from fiery orange to soft pink and purple. The desert stretches out before them, endless and beautiful in its own rugged way. Mary, feeling the weight of the silence between them, turns to Dakota and says, "It's peaceful here, isn't it?" Dakota nods, his expression softer than usual. "It is," he says quietly, "but peace takes time. I used to think peace was something you could fight for, but sometimes ... It's something you have to let in." Mary feels the weight of his words. She understands that he's not just talking about the desert, but about himself, about the years of pain and loss that he's carried with him. For so long, Dakota has kept his emotions locked away, unwilling to let anyone close. But now, she can see that he is beginning to let go, little by little, of the armor he's built around his heart. And though he may never fully share everything with her, Mary understands that this is a slow, gradual process, one that requires patience, trust, and time. As the weeks continue to pass, Dakota begins to make more gestures of affection, though they are always understated and subtle. He brings Mary wildflowers he's picked during his hunts, a rare gesture that speaks volumes. He starts to share more of his thoughts, even if they are brief and to the point. And Mary, for her part, continues to show him kindness and warmth, never demanding anything in return but quietly offering him her support and companionship. One evening, as they sit by the fire, Dakota turns to Mary and finally says something that catches her off guard. "I'm glad you came here." Mary, surprised by his words, looks at him. The warmth of the fire flickers in his eyes, and she realizes, with a mixture of relief and joy, that he is beginning to let her into his world. It's not a grand declaration of love, but it's the beginning of something real, something tangible. For the first time since she arrived, Mary feels as though Dakota is truly present with her, not just physically, but emotionally. She smiles softly, her heart swelling with quiet happiness. "You're not alone anymore," she says gently. "We're in this together." Dakota nods, and for the first time in a long while, he feels the truth of her words deep within him. He has spent so many years pushing people away, believing that isolation was the only way to protect himself. But now, sitting beside Mary, surrounded by the stillness of the desert, he begins to understand that connection isn't a weakness, it's what heals. As they sit together in the glow of the fire, the silence between them is no longer uncomfortable. It is filled with understanding, shared experiences, and the quiet promise of a future together. They have both come a long way since their first meeting, and while they know there will still be challenges ahead, for the first time, they both feel that they are no longer alone. In each other, they have found a kind of peace, one that neither of them expected, but both desperately needed. The renewed bond between them is fragile, but it's real, and it's growing stronger every day. The air is crisp and cool as the sun rises over the desert, casting a soft golden light on the landscape that stretches out endlessly. Inside the cabin, there is a sense of warmth that contrasts with the harshness of the outside world. The fire crackles softly, and the smell of fresh bread fills the room as Mary prepares breakfast, her heart lighter than it's been in a long time. The quiet routine of daily life is now something she cherishes, a sign of the stability she has slowly built with Dakota. The sense of isolation that once weighed so heavily on her is slowly being replaced by a growing sense of belonging. This place, this life, it is becoming hers in ways she never imagined. Dakota, sitting quietly by the fire, watches her. He doesn't speak much, but his presence is comforting. There's no longer a wall between them, no longer the cold, unspoken distance that once defined their relationship. In the silence, there is understanding of each other's pain, their struggles, and most importantly, their resilience. They have both endured hardships, but they have also found something in each other that they didn't expect: love. Dakota, once a man hardened by loss and pain, now knows what it means to care for someone again. He doesn't speak of his feelings often, but his actions have become more intentional, more affectionate. He has come to understand that he doesn't have to carry his burdens alone, that allowing someone into his life doesn't make him weak, but strong. Mary, with her quiet kindness and unwavering determination, has taught him that love isn't about perfection or grand gestures. It's about being present, about showing up for each other even in the hardest of times. Mary, too, has changed. The woman who once felt like an outsider in Dakota's world now feels deeply connected to it. The land, once harsh and unforgiving, has become a place where she can find peace and purpose. Dakota's presence is no longer something to be feared or misunderstood. It is a source of strength. She has learned that love isn't about waiting for perfection or expecting someone to be what you want them to be. It's about accepting each other for who they are, flaws and all, and finding a way to grow together. That morning, as they sit down to eat breakfast, there's a quiet moment between them, a moment where words aren't necessary. Dakota looks at Mary, and for the first time, he says something he's never said before. "I'm glad you stayed." The words are simple, but they carry so much weight. They are not just a statement of gratitude. They are a declaration of everything that has changed between them. Mary looks at him, her heart swelling with emotion, and she smiles. The uncertainty she once felt about their future is gone. She knows now that they are building something real, something that will endure. "I'm glad I stayed too," she replies softly. "I never imagined this life, but now that I'm here, I can't imagine being anywhere else." Dakota nods, his eyes filled with a quiet intensity. The walls that once separated them are now gone. What was once a partnership born out of necessity has become a union grounded in love and mutual respect. Together, they have learned to heal, to trust, and to build a future where both of them can thrive. Later that afternoon, Dakota leads Mary to a small clearing in the desert, a place they've visited many times before. But today, it feels different. Today, the desert is no longer just a barren wasteland. It's a place full of possibility. Dakota takes Mary's hand and looks out over the horizon, the setting sun casting long shadows across the land. I don't know what the future holds, Dakota says, his voice soft. But I know I want to face it with you. Mary squeezes his hand, her heart full. I feel the same way, she replies. We've already made it through so much together. We'll make it through whatever comes next. As they stand there, side by side, gazing out at the world before them, they both know that they are ready to face whatever comes next. The journey has been long, and the road ahead may still have its challenges, but they are no longer facing it alone. They have each other, and that is enough. In the distance, the desert stretches on, vast and endless. But for the first time, it feels like home. For the first time, they are no longer two solitary figures in a harsh, unforgiving world. They are partners, bound together by love, resilience, and a shared commitment to building a future. As the sun dips below the horizon, the world is bathed in a soft, warm glow, and Dakota and Mary stand together, ready for whatever the next chapter will bring. This is the beginning of something new, a new life, a new love, and a new future. A Christmas miracle, indeed. As the winter months drag on, something subtle begins to change in the air. The harsh, unrelenting cold of the desert seems to mirror the emotional frost between Mary and Dakota, yet despite the outward bleakness, a glimmer of hope begins to form in their relationship. Slowly, they start to understand one another in small, unspoken ways. Though Dakota remains a man of few words, his actions begin to speak louder than his silence. Mary, ever determined, continues her daily routines. She wakes early each morning, lighting the fire, preparing breakfast, and taking care of the cabin. At first, these tasks felt overwhelming, but with time, Mary becomes more comfortable in this rugged life. The daily chores are hard work, but she has found a sense of purpose in them. She doesn't just do them to keep busy. She does them because she's building something, her life, her future. Each task, though small, feels like a victory in a world that initially seemed so foreign and cold. Dakota, watching her efforts from afar, begins to notice something in Mary that he hadn't before. At first, he saw her as an outsider, someone who didn't understand the harsh realities of life in the desert. But now, he sees her resilience. She's learning to adapt to the land, to the challenges, and to the emotional isolation of the frontier. He's beginning to understand that she's not just a stranger. She's a woman with strength and determination, a woman who refuses to give up, even when the circumstances are less than ideal. One afternoon, after returning from a hunt, Dakota finds Mary sitting outside, her back against the cabin, staring out at the horizon. There's a quiet sadness in her posture, a longing that Dakota can't ignore. He hesitates for a moment before walking over to her. I've never seen the world like this before, Mary says quietly, her voice soft. Back east, everything was so busy. People were always rushing around. But here, it's different. It's lonely, but also peaceful. Dakota, surprised by her openness, sits down beside her. He doesn't say anything at first, unsure of how to respond. He's not used to expressing his feelings, especially not to someone he barely knows. But something about Mary's vulnerability strikes him. He had forgotten what it was like to feel connected to another person, to talk openly about life's struggles. It's the land, Dakota finally says, his voice low and measured. It's quiet here. But the quiet can be heavy. Mary nods, understanding more than she lets on. The silence between them isn't uncomfortable, but it's filled with the unspoken recognition of their shared isolation. Neither of them is truly alone anymore, but they still carry the weight of their pasts. In the days that follow, Dakota begins to open up to Mary in small ways. He shows her how to track animals in the snow, teaching her skills she never thought she'd need. They go on hunting trips together, side by side, though the silence still lingers between them. Yet, With each shared moment, Dakota begins to see Mary differently. She's no longer just a mail-order bride. She's a partner, someone who is beginning to carve out a place for herself in his world. For Mary, this change is small but meaningful. As Dakota opens up to her more, she begins to see glimpses of the man beneath the hardened exterior, the warrior who has suffered loss, who is scarred both physically and emotionally. He's not the cold, indifferent stranger she first met. He's someone who has lived through pain, just like her. One evening, as the sun sets and paints the sky with hues of orange and pink, Dakota makes a rare gesture. He hands Mary a small pouch of herbs he had gathered earlier in the day. "For the fire," he says simply, referring to the medicinal herbs that can be used to soothe a sore throat or calm a restless night. Mary's heart swells at the gesture. It's a small thing, but it's the first time Dakota has offered her something without reservation. It's a sign that he's beginning to trust her, to let her in. The quiet moments they share over the next few days are small steps toward healing for both of them. Dakota's walls are not yet completely down, but they're starting to crack. Mary's heart, once filled with doubt, begins to feel something more hope. They're still far from the warmth and affection she once imagined, but she can see that Dakota is starting to feel again. In this small, fragile hope, there's a sense of renewal for both of them. They're both healing in their own way, learning from one another, and slowly, very slowly beginning to build the foundation of something new. Something that could one day be more than just survival, but a shared life full of potential. As Christmas approaches, the air grows even colder and the days become shorter in the vast desert. Dakota's cabin, though modest, is now filled with a different kind of atmosphere, a subtle change that both he and Mary are beginning to notice. The initial tension between them, while still present, has softened. There is a quiet understanding in their shared silences, a mutual respect that's slowly taking root. But despite the small strides they've made in their relationship, the emotional distance between them remains. Mary, however, is determined to make the best of this holiday, despite the cold, the isolation, and the emotional walls that still stand between her and Dakota. She knows that Christmas, while a reminder of all that she left behind, also symbolizes new beginnings. With this thought in mind, she sets out to bring a bit of the Christmas spirit to the cabin. The task feels daunting, but Mary is resolved to try. After all, this is her new life now, and she's determined to make it her own, starting with the holiday. Over the course of several days, she begins to gather materials from around the cabin branches, dried flowers, small pine cones, and scraps of fabric. She weaves these together into a modest but heartfelt decoration. Dakota, ever the observer, watches her quietly, but he says nothing. He's unsure of how to respond to her efforts. The man who once fought for everything with ferocity has never known a kind of celebration like this one that involves softness, warmth, and shared moments of joy. On Christmas Eve, when the sun begins to set and the air grows even colder, Mary finishes her small tree. She carefully places a few candles she found in an old chest and arranges her handmade decorations. The tree is not grand or elaborate, but to her it feels like a symbol of hope, a hope that she can make a place for herself here, that she can bring light into the darkness, not just for herself, but for Dakota too. As the evening deepens, she invites Dakota to join her by the fire. She watches him, hoping that he will see the effort she's made, that he will understand the love and care she has put into this moment. Dakota looks at her, then at the tree, and something in his expression shifts. For the first time since she arrived, he doesn't turn away. He takes a seat beside her, though his gaze is still distant. He doesn't speak, but the quiet acknowledgement in his eyes says enough. Mary smiles softly, her heart swelling at the small breakthrough. That night, as they sit together in the flickering light of the fire and the humble Christmas tree, Dakota does something unexpected. He reaches out, not with words, but with a gesture. He places a small bundle of dried herbs beside her, her favorite from the plants he had gathered earlier in the week. It's not much, but the gesture speaks volumes. It's the first time Dakota has offered her something without her having to ask. The first time he's shown her a sliver of his care. For Mary, it's a miracle, a small one, but a miracle nonetheless. She looks at him, not with the fear and uncertainty she once had, but with a new understanding. She sees him not just as the warrior who hides his pain behind walls, but as a man who has suffered, who is slowly learning to trust again, and who is capable of love. Dakota doesn't speak, but the warmth that fills the room, soft, unspoken, yet undeniable, says everything. He may not have been ready for love before, but tonight he has let it in, even if just a little. Mary feels it too. For the first time, she realizes that this Christmas isn't just a reminder of everything she has lost. It is also a symbol of what she has gained. She's found something in this cold, harsh place. The possibility of love, healing, and a future with Dakota. As they sit in silence, the fire crackling softly between them, they both know that their journey is far from over. There are still walls to break down, still wounds to heal, but for now, they have each other, and that's enough. This Christmas, a quiet miracle has begun to unfold between them. And though it's just the beginning, it's a beginning filled with hope, warmth, and the promise of something more. The journey across the country is long, uncomfortable, and filled with uncertainty. Mary, with little more than a small trunk of belongings and a heart full of hope, rides the railroads and takes the stagecoaches that will carry her westward. The landscapes she passes through are unlike anything she's ever seen before. Vast plains, towering mountains, and endless stretches of wilderness. She spends her nights in dimly lit inns, trying to sleep while the strange noises of the frontier echo outside her window. Each day is a new test of her endurance and patience, and though she has prepared herself for the harsh realities of life in the West, nothing can fully prepare her for what she is about to face. As Mary nears her destination, she begins to feel a knot form in her stomach. The excitement she once felt at the prospect of a new life is now mixed with fear and anxiety. What will Dakota, the man she is to marry, be like? Will he be kind, or will he be a stranger to her in every sense of the word? She tries to picture him an Apache warrior, strong and silent, with little in common with the men she's known back east. The cultural divide between them seems vast, and the uncertainty weighs heavily on her. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, Mary reaches her destination, Dakota's cabin in the desert. The landscape is stark, beautiful, and unforgiving all at once. The air is thin, and the temperature is colder than she expected. As the stagecoach pulls to a stop, she sees him standing there, a tall figure in the distance, draped in furs and leathers, with dark eyes that seem to look right through her. His presence is imposing, yet there's a quiet sadness about him that she can sense even from a distance. Dakota's stoic demeanor is in sharp contrast to the bright, bustling city life she left behind in Boston. As Mary steps off the coach, she is hit with a wave of cold air that takes her breath away. The desert stretches endlessly before her, and she feels more alone than ever. She grips her trunk tightly as she approaches Dakota, who stands silently, waiting for her. She can feel the weight of his gaze on her, but there's no warmth, no welcoming smile. His face is expressionless, and he says nothing as she approaches. "Dakota?" she asks hesitantly, her voice trembling with both anticipation and uncertainty. He nods curtly but doesn't say anything in return. The silence between them is thick, uncomfortable, and Mary is unsure how to break it. She wonders if she's made a mistake, if the man before her is as distant as he seems. He motions for her to follow him, and they walk in silence toward the cabin. The path is rough, the ground hard and uneven. Mary struggles to keep up with his long strides, feeling small and out of place. Inside the cabin, the warmth of the fire is a small comfort, but the air is still thick with tension. Dakota doesn't offer her any greetings, simply setting her trunk down in a corner before walking to the fire to stoke it. He doesn't ask how the journey was, doesn't offer her a drink or a seat. He seems to be in his own world, as though she is merely another part of the landscape, something he has little control over. Mary stands awkwardly, unsure of what to do next. She has imagined this moment countless times, but the reality is nothing like she expected. The warmth and kindness she had hoped for seem absent, replaced by an unspoken distance between them that Mary can't quite understand. "I'll get settled in," Mary says softly, her voice faltering. "It's different here." Dakota looks at her briefly, his dark eyes unreadable, before turning back to the fire. There's a quiet strength in him, but also a weariness that Mary can't ignore. As she watches him, she realizes that this man, who seemed so distant in the letter, is much more complex than she could have ever imagined. And while her journey to reach him is over, a new challenge has begun, a challenge of understanding, of bridging the vast gap between their worlds, and perhaps of healing the loneliness they both carry inside. The days following Mary's arrival at Dakota's cabin are filled with uncertainty and discomfort. The stark reality of life in the wilderness sets in as she faces the harshness of the desert and the emotional coldness of her new husband. The cabin, though cozy enough, feels isolating, and the loneliness is compounded by Dakota's silence and apparent indifference. He speaks very little, and when he does, it is often curt, leaving Mary unsure of her place in this new world. She had imagined a warm welcome, perhaps even a glimmer of affection from the man she had agreed to marry. But instead, she is met with stoic silence and the unyielding landscape around her. The cabin itself is modest wooden walls that creak with the wind, a small fireplace, and a few rough-hewn furnishings. There is no warmth of decoration, no sign of a life lived with joy or comfort. It's a place of survival, not living. Mary struggles to adjust to this environment, far removed from the bustling streets of Boston where she once walked with purpose and hope. Here, there are no friends to confide in, no family to share her thoughts and dreams with. She has only Dakota, and he remains an enigma, difficult to understand and even harder to connect with. Dakota, meanwhile, continues to retreat into his solitude. His days are spent in silence, focused on his tasks, gathering wood, hunting, repairing things around the cabin. He rarely acknowledges Mary's presence unless it's necessary, and when he does, his tone is neutral, even distant. At times, Mary wonders if he even notices her, or if he views her simply as another duty, another responsibility he must tend to. He does not ask about her journey, nor does he offer any comfort for the discomfort she feels. The emotional gulf between them seems insurmountable. Mary tries to engage him, but each attempt feels like it hits a wall. She offers him kindness, asks questions about his past, but he answers only in short phrases, his face unreadable. She wonders if he even wants her here. The pain of isolation presses down on her as she wonders whether her decision to come here was a mistake. She misses the warmth of a familiar city, the gentle hum of life that she once took for granted. However, as the days pass, Mary begins to learn the rhythms of this harsh land. She rises early to help with chores, sweeping the dirt floors, gathering firewood, and preparing simple meals. Each task is an effort to prove her worth in this strange place. Though Dakota remains distant, she perseveres, trying to find a sense of purpose in the routine. It is not easy, and there are many moments of frustration and doubt, but there is a quiet strength in her determination. She refuses to give up. One day, while out gathering firewood, Mary faces a small but significant challenge. She is struggling to lift a heavy bundle of branches, and the weight threatens to topple her. Dakota, who had been quietly watching from a distance, steps forward and helps her lift the load. For a brief moment, their eyes meet, and there is something in his gaze, a flicker of acknowledgement, perhaps even appreciation. It is the first sign that he sees her as more than just a presence in his life. Despite this small breakthrough, Mary still feels like an outsider. She's learning to live in the wilderness, but she's not sure she's learning how to live with Dakota. The emotional distance between them seems unbridgeable. She wonders if he will ever let her in, if he will ever share the part of himself that he's buried so deeply. Dakota, for his part, is struggling too. He watches Mary's efforts with a quiet respect, though he hides it well. He doesn't know how to reach her, how to break through the walls he's built around himself. His past, filled with loss and pain, has taught him to keep his emotions locked away. Yet, as Mary continues to persist, he begins to feel a small stirring of something he thought he had lost, the ability to care, to feel again. In this struggle of adjustment, both Mary and Dakota begin the slow, painful process of learning each other's worlds. They are two people from different lives, different cultures, but the possibility of finding common ground is there, if only they can figure out how to meet in the middle. The tension remains, but it is clear that change is starting to happen, one small step at a time. The story begins in the barren and rugged desert of the American Southwest, where the bitter cold of winter clashes with the harsh winds of the desert. Snow lightly dusts the ground, and the horizon stretches endlessly in every direction. Amid this vast, lonely landscape stands Dakota, a once feared Apache warrior, now a man isolated both physically and emotionally. His cabin, simple and weathered, sits at the edge of a rugged cliff, overlooking a vast stretch of desert. Dakota has lived here for years, alone with the weight of his past, a man who once fought fiercely in battles but is now consumed by grief and solitude. Dakota's past is marred by the trauma of losing everything. His family, his people, and his spirit were all ravaged by a violent raid that took the lives of his wife and children. Since that day, Dakota has shut himself off from the world, believing that emotions are a weakness, something a warrior cannot afford to indulge. The pain of loss has become an anchor in his heart, one that he cannot escape from. His pride as a warrior holds him back from seeking comfort or healing, and instead, he buries his emotions deep inside, refusing to acknowledge the yearning for love and connection that still flickers in his heart. Christmas is approaching, but for Dakota, it's just another day. There is no joy in the holiday for him, no memories of a family gathering around the fire. For years, he has dismissed Christmas, seeing it as a day like any other, full of emptiness. The festive spirit that many people embrace only serves to deepen his sense of loss. He watches the skies at night, the stars shimmering above, and wonders what his life could have been if fate hadn't been so cruel. The warrior is alone with his thoughts, trapped in a cycle of bitterness, self-pity, and a silent battle with his own heart. One day, as Dakota sits by the fire, staring into the flames, a letter arrives. It's an unexpected message from a distant relative, someone Dakota barely knows. The letter is brief and to the point, informing him about a mail-order bride service that has been established to connect lonely men in the West with women from across the country and beyond. The letter includes a brochure that features women of various backgrounds, all eager to find a new life in the untamed frontier. The offer is simple. For a fee, men can choose a woman who will travel to them, promising companionship, possibly even love. Dakota is initially skeptical. He has lived without love for so long, and the idea of bringing a stranger into his life feels foreign, even ridiculous. He has no interest in emotional attachments, convinced that a warrior's life is one of solitude. Yet, as he holds the letter in his hands, something stirs inside him, a faint flicker of hope, perhaps, or the deep yearning for something more than this lonely existence. Could a woman truly change his life? Could she bring warmth back into his cold heart? Despite his reservations, Dakota finds himself contemplating the idea. He knows that a man like him, hardened by war and grief, may never find peace unless he allows himself to feel again. But is he ready to take that first step, to invite someone into his life and let go of the emotional fortress he's built around himself? The seed of possibility is planted, and though Dakota is unsure, the thought of a future beyond loneliness begins to take root. The warrior must decide. Will he remain trapped in the past, or will he take a chance on a future that could offer him the very thing he's been denying himself, love? In a cozy home in Boston, Mary sits by the window, gazing out at the bustling streets below. The streets are alive with the sounds of Christmas carolers singing, the jingling of horse-drawn carriages, and families shopping for gifts. Despite the festive atmosphere, Mary feels disconnected. She has always been a quiet, reserved woman, raised in a modest household where dreams were often deferred due to financial struggles. The Christmas season, filled with cheer and family gatherings, only serves as a reminder of what she lacks: stability, love, and the sense of belonging that many of her peers seem to take for granted. Mary's father, a struggling merchant, has tried his best to make ends meet, but his health has been failing and the family's future feels uncertain. Her mother, once vibrant, has grown frail, and Mary's older siblings have already moved on, leaving her alone in the small house. She feels the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, knowing that, as the youngest, she is expected to help care for her parents in their old age. Her dreams of marriage and a life full of love seem increasingly out of reach, as few suitors show interest in a woman like her, plain, unremarkable, and without a dowry. One cold winter's evening, as Mary sits beside the fire, trying to help her mother with her knitting, a letter arrives at the doorstep. It is unlike any letter she has received before, unofficial and strange, but offering hope. The letter is from a mail-order bride service, one that matches women like Mary with men in the West who are looking for companionship. The letter promises a fresh start, an escape from the mundane life she has known, and an opportunity to build a new future with a man who values her. Her heart races as she reads the letter, the idea both thrilling and terrifying. Mary has heard stories about such services, women who leave their homes and travel to the wild unknown, where the men are rugged and the land is unforgiving. She knows that many women from the East have taken such risks, but the stories are always clouded with uncertainty. Yet, in her current circumstances, the prospect of change seems like the only hope she has left. The thought of adventure, of stepping outside the life she's always known, fills her with both excitement and fear. After days of pondering, she makes a decision. She will answer the letter. Despite the uncertainty, the risk, and the daunting idea of marrying a man she has never met, Mary feels that this is her chance to break free from the life she has been trapped in. The possibility of building a future on her own terms, away from the expectations of her family, is too tempting to resist. She writes a response, carefully choosing her words, hoping that whoever reads her letter will understand the depth of her desire for a new life. The letter is sent, and Mary waits, hoping that her decision will lead to a better life. She has no idea who Dakota is or what kind of man he might be, but she knows that this is her only shot at happiness. The uncertainty lingers, but the hope of a better future begins to grow, even as she imagines the vast unknowns that lie ahead. In this moment of anticipation, Mary takes a deep breath and prepares herself for the journey. She knows that once she leaves, there will be no turning back. The life she has known will be behind her, and the future, uncertain as it may be, is ready to unfold. As she makes her preparations, she says a quiet goodbye to the life she's known, holding on to the belief that this leap of faith will lead her to something greater, something that will make her heart feel alive again.